Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World. Later in the programme, Palestine, Denmark, Pakistan, plus comedian and author Ben Elton. But first, the United States race for the White House. With just 2 months until the US primaries, the latest opinion polls place Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Rudy Giuliani as the two candidates most likely to meet in next year's election, despite a slightly shaky performance by the former First Lady last week on television in a debate. Joining me now is the retired four-star General Wesley Clark, who ran for the Democratic presidential nomination back in 2004 and has recently endorsed Mrs. Clinton. He's also published a new book called A Time to Lead, which we hope will be published here soon and around the rest of the world. We'll put a word in with your publishers. Wesley, very good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. And tell me, first of all, the decision you took not to be a candidate yourself, and then the decision to choose Hillary. What decided you not to run again?
I looked at it carefully. I couldn't get my preconditions. I just couldn't line up the dots to connect them. There was several different issues there. I've never gone into detail, but we have a very good candidate in Hillary Clinton. I've known her for 24 years. She is strong, she's experienced, she's got great character, she'll be a good commander-in-chief and a good president.
And so it was an easy choice. Once you made the decision not to run, it didn't take you more than 2 minutes to think who you would support for the Democratic nomination.
That's true.
And,
that's true.
And you said she'll be a good commander-in-chief. Why do you say that?
Well, you know, she and her husband, when they were governor, got to know the National Guard. They came to the White House. Bill Clinton was a good commander-in-chief. Hillary was there. She was in Bosnia in '95. She was in Kosovo the week after we stopped the bombing. She was there with the president. She's been through crises in the White House. She's a senator. She's on the Senate Armed Services Committee. She's made 3 trips to Iraq, 3 to Afghanistan. She understands the military. She's got great rapport with the military and with families, which is important. I think she's going to be a great commander-in-chief.
And do you think she will be very much a president in terms of policy on issues and so on, very, very similar to her husband?
I think she's going to be someone who really knows the issues. She studies. She's interested in doing something for the country. She's not someone who's going to be a 9-to-5 president. She's going to really work it and try to do everything she can during her time in office to make a difference in America. I think America is thirsting for that kind of leadership. We've got a whole array of unmet needs in education and health and labor and management relations and technology and infrastructure. And you can look at where the dollar is today and the energy policy. There's just a range of issues that have to be seriously worked. This current administration has been way off the mark. They've gotten us deeply engaged in a war we didn't have to fight in the first place, and then focused excessively on the Middle East there without actually using all the resources, dumped the problem on the military, $800 billion spent, 4,000 American dead, and or nearly 4,000, tens of thousands wounded, hundreds of thousands of Iraqis, and the strategies left Iran as the major winner in the region, and the United States weaker. So it's been a tough 7 years for the United States of America. We need new leadership.
And in this particular situation, I mean, you said just now that it was a war we didn't need to fight.
That's right.
A lot of people were quite in favor of the war.
2003.
Pardon? Sorry, I didn't hear.
That's why I ran in 2003. I saw it coming. I talked to the military. I was one of the people who was doing the bombing of Saddam Hussein. I knew what the threat was. I'd read the intelligence before I retired. I understood Osama bin Laden and al-Qaeda. I thought it was a strategic blunder, and it's proved to be exactly that.
Why was it wrong? Because a lot of people, everybody says it was a disaster, the Iraq war, immediately afterwards. We didn't have enough men there, we didn't anticipate the problems, and so on and so forth. But there were quite a number of people, 50% of the public or more, were in favor of going in, weren't they? But they were wrong, you're saying.
Well, there was an outcry, there was shock, there was fear. I think the intelligence was hyped. I think the media was part of this. They didn't really understand what the issues were or what the threat was. And it was really unfortunate because you shouldn't go to war unless it's the last resort. In the Kosovo campaign, where NATO went to war against Slobodan Milosevic, it was the last resort to stop a fourth war in the Balkans and ethnic cleansing and another wave of refugees. And we tried everything before war was the last resort. In Iraq, there was a rush to war. There was a desire on the part of some of the administration, I think, just to sort of show that Americans were tough, could get in there and duke it out. And we'd spent 12 years in the military studying Saddam Hussein's military, planning to fight it. We knew it wasn't going to be much of a campaign, but what the administration had in mind was something a little bit different. They actually wanted to go from Iraq to knock off regimes in Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. And I talk about this in my book, David. There was a 5-year concept plan written in a memo that was discussed with me early in November of 2001, just a couple of months after 9/11. 7 countries, 5 years. It was the Wolfowitz, Cheney grand strategy of reshaping the Middle East by using military force. And it's just a wrong-headed notion. Iraq was the first effort in that case, and you can see the results in Iraq. It's un-American. We're not an aggressive nation. And when we try to do something like that, we go against our own values. We're not structured to win there. So now we've got a real mess on our hands.
And what about, as you hear the jungle drums now, do you hear the same planning going on among the neocons and whoever to do the same in Iran? Is that really, they were one of the lists of those nations, but I mean today the drums are beating a bit about Iran. Do you fear that?
Well, they are. I do fear that the administration harbors an intent to strike Iran. And it could be because of Iranian interference in Iraq. It could be because of the Iranian nuclear program. But the truth is, Iran was always a greater challenge for the United States. Saddam was the cork in the bottle. He held back Iranian power. And when we took out Saddam, we opened the floodgates for the Iranians to try to gain influence, and they are an influence in Iraq right now. And so we've got another problem on our hands now in the Middle East. I don't think the right way to resolve it is the use of force, but I do think you have to face the problem. So I'm in favor of a policy of engagement with Iran now, before it's too late, before some intelligence officer walks into the President of the United States and said, Mr. President or Madam President, we've just detected that the uranium has been enriched. It's being pulled together. You've got a window of a week to make a decision on a strike to take out the enriched uranium before it's dispersed, and we'll never see it again until it shows up as nuclear weapons. I don't want that day to come without the United States having done its utmost in diplomacy. And right now, we won't talk to Iran unless they stop their nuclear enrichment. So we're not using diplomacy the way we should be. It's another strategic failure by the Bush administration.
And one last question. If the phone rings in a few months' time and Hillary Clinton is the candidate for the Democrats and she were to invite you to be the vice president candidate, would you say yes?
Well, that's a speculative question, and I think we're a long way from that. What I am trying to do is trying to help Senator Clinton become the Democratic nominee. She's got to win that contest. It'll start right after Christmas. It'll probably be over in 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks, depending on what the outcome of the first contests are, and then we'll see. But I'm in the business community. I'm very happy where I am. I'm happy with the new book I've written. I hope our British audience will read it, because I think it says a lot about who America is, what American leadership looks like when it's done right, and what America must do in the future to resume its rightful leadership place in the pantheon of nations in the world.
Well, that's a jolly good program right there. Thank you so much, Wesley, for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure, and we hope to see you again soon. General Wesley Clark. In a moment, the Syrian-born politician whose new party is the talk of the Danish elections. That's after this incredibly short break.